I did not get to tell him that you wanted to go first, just to let you know.
We'll call this meeting to order, and I think the first thing we should do is go around and introduce ourselves because we are being recorded.
Yep.
Beth?
I'm Beth Beeman. I'm the Playhouse manager.
Scott Hubler, Whitehall City Manager.
I'm Frank Eric, and I chair the Friends trustees.
I'm Tom Zemer, and I'm on the Whitehall City Council.
Julie Johnson, retired assistant, former business owner.
I know what you do. The first thing we're going to do is run through the past 5 years of financial activity.
Oh, Frank.
And the reason for that, it just seemed to me as we discussed last time, that we didn't really have a handle on what the district was. Perhaps it was certain for all to do that. Lori and Alyssa worked together to put together a 5-year scenario. Lori, would you just run through what you did and what the results were? And I have passed this out if anyone has a copy of this.
I just condensed kind of by category, revenue and expenditures. For the major revenues, you want me to go through every one or just?
Highlight the categories.
Okay, the grants, we had grants every year in what we took in, summer tickets, White Lake Youth Theater, other events, concessions, rental of the Playhouse, sponsorships, other income, donations, city donation, and Friends pass-through for income.
Mm-hmm.
Then for expenditures, I did salaries and fringes, the summer season, White Lake Youth Theater, other events, concession, overhead, which is like operating supplies, office supplies, audit, memberships, that kind of thing. Then building is utilities, repair and maintenance, contractual services for like the boiler or air conditioning, anything, fire suppression, that kind of thing. Marketing and tickets, equipment, and capital improvements.
Okay. And I think there are some interesting things to take a look at. We'll run down those lines. Beginning with the grants, it's interesting that in 2021 and 22, the theater was supported by, they were federal, I believe it was a federal grant for employment, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were COVID-related, Save Our Stages and Michigan grants that were available because of the COVID pandemic.
So if you look at that particular line item in 21, it was 92,000. 22, it was 77,000. And when you look at the profitability side in those 2 years, we were +6 in 21 and +27 in 22. And it was primarily because of those large influx of grant funds. As you can see, ticket sales in 21 were pretty dismal because we couldn't perform when there was an outdoor program. That was pretty much it. And then ticket sales have steadily gained over the last 4 years, basically by about 25% over that period of time. And, the youth theater is going down in cost primarily because of the method being used. Concessions are looking pretty good, and we have some thoughts on that. Rental is up. Beth, you might talk about a few things. We were talking about the next 4 months, what you have going in the next 3 months.
As far as rentals are concerned, we have 3 weddings that are bringing in a certain amount of income for us. We have been renting to the church, Hope Bible Chapel, at $500 a Sunday, and that is, they're actually moving to a different facility, but that has been some good, consistent income for us. They're moving in April. in mid-April. So that will be not an income that we have. I know I looked at some other ones. And then the Arts Council of White Lake is renting to a 2-day improv program that they'll be doing here. And yeah, off the top of my head, those are it. So it's a variety of different ways that the Playhouse is being used.
And moving to the expenditure side, of course, salaries and wages are big. And the summer season, the summer festival is large. But a cost that is relatively new to us is the cost of the building, and you can see our estimated combined costs for the whole year is in the neighborhood of $50,000 too.
All right, I'm gonna have you hold for just a second. I'm getting messages that they're not hearing the audio. So, if you want to move a little closer.
Is that better?
It's not you, it's on the video.
Oh, I see.
Some of the mics aren't coming through here into my stuff,
Okay.
so I just have that camera go.
Is this one coming through?
I can hear you clearly when I have the video up right now, so I
Okay. We're gonna share this link.
We can hear you in here.
Okay. Beth, you probably need to adjust Tom's while you're at it. Okay.
Is there anything I can do to help you back there?
okay, I know.
Okay.
So tonight, the things that we want to discuss are primarily what can we do in the next 4 months to try to reduce the exposure or to avoid the deficit as much as we can. And with that in mind, what we're looking at is the left-hand column and what we're expecting for revenue and then what we're expecting as expenditures for that period of time. So if you look at the sheet, we do expect to have grants in an amount of about $25,000 for the next 4 months. We are going to begin selling tickets for the summer season, but that revenue would actually apply to the fiscal year beginning July 1st. So we would not have that. The White Lake Youth Theater is a very small amount. We do have other events planned. We have our May 1st kickoff for Friends of the Theater. We expect to do probably in the neighborhood of $5,000 for that. We have an event also scheduled for later in March of the bowls come here for entertainment and have a bowl of chili or bowl of soup. $30 a ticket. We're expecting to do about $3,000 or $4,000 for that as well. Concessions on all of the events for the next few months should be in the neighborhood of $4,000. And as Beth said, we have several rentals that total about $8,100. And we're continuing to work on sponsorships, and our estimate for that's about $15,000. And we likewise are working on donations. There's a little difference between sponsorships and donations. The sponsorships are primarily being attached to an activity that's going on in the theater, where a donation is simply a gift to the
So Frank, just to,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just asking Lori this. So when you're looking at this, I'm sorry, I was saying with our business, we use fiscal year. So it takes me a minute to wrap my head around the June to June. But so when you look under the 2024, even though we talked about last time a deficit shortfall of 65,000, we're projecting at the end of the year of 39,000.
but 24 is passed.
See, that's, okay,
Right. So 25 is the period that's ending this June 30th.
okay.
This is.
This is-
26 will begin July 1st.
Start in July.
So that what we're talking about is the current year that we're in, the last two columns. So at the top, the 25 and the 39 will be combined. We would be taking 11,000 out that we feel is, it actually would be accrued for the following year. So the bottom line here is that we probably are going to come close, but what we're looking at for the next fiscal year is what can we recommend to the city in the way of adjusting the operation of the theater so that it comes closer to balancing and successfully balancing, and also has a cash flow that will support some other activities that we don't have at the moment. And our Friends group met last night and we discussed several options that we thought might be considered by the group. And
So
we, yes,
I'm so sorry.
yes.
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
So at the end of this fiscal year, which will be
June 30th.
June 30th, you're not actually projecting a shortfall for this fiscal year.
It would be a couple $1,000.
I think that these numbers we have not vetted these numbers, because like wages are gonna be more than the 49,000. It's still gonna be a negative. We just don't know how much. And like the sponsorships, if that's for this season, or those sponsorships will be for the summer season, not necessarily from now until June. And
Correct.
So that.
So those are, that 15,000 sheet be deferred, that was my misunderstanding of the
Yeah.
numbers you were looking for.
Yeah, so, you're gonna take 25,000 there, you're gonna add 17 down here, so you're gonna be at like, what, 35,000 negative?
Probably something.
Which is about what, Scott, you said on a yearly
Yearly
basis
basis.
would be.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to wrap my head around what is actually, where we actually think that number is going to be versus where it potentially was at earlier in the year, it was 100,000, then it was 65,000. Just so that people have more of a, I guess, clear number of what that is. And it's not as large a number as you said, Scott, in the very beginning.
But we don't want to be too optimistic on this.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just trying to wrap my head around.
What we're really trying to do is to set some programming that would realize significant additional revenue for the Playhouse. But we have to also get it in the right fiscal year. So some of this activity is ongoing now, but it doesn't apply to this year. And we have to be careful about that.
Okay, thank you.
So as we looked at the opportunities, and maybe we can go there and then back into this. One of the things that we saw as an opportunity was to increase the ticket sales price. We talked about that quite a bit, and what we would suggest as a possibility is increasing the ticket price from $27 to $30. It's about a little better than a 10% increase. I think the assessment by the group was that it wouldn't cause any reduction in our attendance. If someone's interested in seeing the play or the theater, the $3 isn't going to make much difference, but it makes a whole world of difference to us. So it's kind of like a no-brainer in a way. Likewise, the matinee ticket would go from $22 to $25. And then that impacts the season tickets or the flex tickets, because we would then be offering a 12 flex for $300 and a 6 flex for $150.
And those changes have already been implemented as of today. Just
But
to let you know.
what we're suggesting now, get this so that we're understanding, we've got a couple of things going on here. We're doing the activity today, but what we're recommending would be recommending to the city is that it be incorporated in the budget that's going to be approved effective in May and June.
Yeah.
So when you say, I've done this today, that's okay, but the impact is on the next fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
just to make sure everybody understands that, yes, I
right.
appreciate that.
We want to be sure that we're on the same page, because there's a recommendation on the budget, and then there's a recommendation on some policies, and those two things are a little different.
Yep.
And then there are some recommendations that are for the management.
Mhm.
So there's different things going on here. So and we'll get that all sorted out. The other opportunity that we saw that seemed to be really significant is the rental fees. And the current rental for the facility is $850, I believe.
Yes.
Is that correct? And what the Friends group thought, and some of them are having weddings here in the near future, and found that booking a wedding in a venue is a little bit pricier than $850. So what we're recommending is a $1,600 rental for the facility per day. And that gets back to an assessment that was made by Lori. If we did operations in the facility for 180 days, divided into our budget, it would be about $1,660, $1,666. I think was the exact number that you gave. So we thought the facility should rent at $1,600. So that would be incorporated in the revenue projection for next year as well. And then a partial would be you're just renting the lobby area, or you're just renting it for a very short period of time, 2 hours or something like that, would be $1,000. And for a small rental at the mainly the green room would be $400. So if you wanted to do a birthday party or a pre-play party, you could rent a lot, but you could do it as a pre-play party.
Yeah, you could.
But if
Sounds
you
like you
could,
could do that.
yeah. So it'd be $400. So if we look at those increases and we go to what we're getting in rentals now, we're looking at probably a doubling of the rental. But we're also looking at one tenant who was a pretty good tenant for a year, leaving. It was $500 a week for
Yes.
the full 52 weeks.
Yeah. And that was, that agreement went to summer, I believe, so we're just a little bit short of what the original agreement was. They just have grown too big, so.
But when we look at the $36,996 that we've received in rental income so far, the big portion of that is that one rental.
Correct.
So in effect, when we put this into place, it's going to not have as much impact as it would appear because we're losing that piece. So we'll have to calculate that number before we get to our final. You see what I mean, Tom? It's not gonna work. But the idea would be to up these rentals and see how we do with that. And we do want to leave a little bit of flexibility because there are some things like, excuse me, City Hall renting the venue might get a break on it. So that would sort of be up to the management to decide how they would do that. Another idea that we had was to increase the beverage cost. Right now, we're charging $6 for a beer and $6 for a wine. And if we look at our revenue for concessions, we're at $11,209 for the year, with an expense of about $4,000. So we're pretty profitable. But the thought was to increase the wine to $9 rather than $6. And that also would then be incorporated in the budget. So we would be making a recommendation for the next budget year that be included. And then the one thing we wanted to get on the table that we think is really important to take a look at is this, the building costs and what we might do about that. And I think that, we have a building that is far better than the building we used to have. And we can now heat it and air condition it, and we have toilets, bathrooms, and things that work. And,
No outhouse anymore.
but these utilities are high, and then over the last 5 years, they've also gone up. So we've all experienced some growth in that. So one thought that we had was to try to manage the Playhouse so that basically in January and February we're closed. And this came up as a suggestion at the city council that I thought the suggestion was maybe closed except for the summer. I think we have enough activity, we can demonstrate enough to keep it open for the period for March through December. And if something came along that was really a profitable, if a company came in and wanted to rent it for 3 days for $5,000, we could crank up the heat and let it. But the idea would be that for the most part it's closed, and we wouldn't book entertainment during that period. We would book the entertainment, like the bubble show, I think you mentioned, and the puppet show.
Yeah.
Could have been in March or April as well. So it's like consolidating the operation.
What would be the estimate on how much you would save if it was thermostat were set for 55? I would imagine it'd be okay, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be okay to set it at 55. I don't know the exact, because how do you know exactly? But it'd be a few $1,000s for sure. I don't know what the exact amount would be just because. Did you have an estimate, Maureen?
We have it.
We're talking about $7,000 to $8,000 for utilities for those 2 months. So if you even cut it by half,
right,
that's pretty good. And then the thought was that opens up Cindy, Beth, and I to be able to do more focus on development and things like that, more grant writing and taking the time to do that instead of running shows.
We might be able to do about 25%. On those, I'm sorry, we might be able to get it down about half at least.
yeah, around half.
And if we can do that for 2 months, it's about $17,000.
If you set the temperature at 55, would you have any cold spots where a pipe might freeze or something, or is it pretty consistent throughout the building?
It's pretty consistent. When things are working, it's pretty consistent throughout the building. We need to be, doing every other day checks just to make sure everything is working like it should be, because things do go wrong. But I would think there's nothing I'm concerned about in the building as far as, we have a basement under here, and that's kind of controlled by just the ground itself. So nothing in here, I wouldn't be concerned about anything if we were at 55.
About 5,100 for the 2 months in consumers and DTE.
That's what the bill. The bill for each month?
No.
Or the 2 months, so it's 5,100. Okay.
The other thing associated with that, and I think there is the problem is being solved already, is the automation of the thermostats. And we talked about that at length, and I think that the system is set up to automate them, and now it just has to be implemented. So we're optimistic about that. We also, we would like to set a goal for ourselves, and this would be more for the friends, but we would advise the city that we're going to try to do this is to find a sponsor for the youth theater. And we've set a price of $25,000 on that sponsorship. And we want to work to see if we can find a single sponsor for that, or a combination of sponsors that would come up with $25,000. And for the general sponsorships, we're looking to, the Friends are looking to set a goal of 15% increase annually for the next 3 years. So we don't think we can get it all at once because you have to build these sponsorships. But we think that we can get it over time, and that we want to broaden our area of sponsorship so that it's not just the White Lake community, but it's a broader area that we're bringing in.
Frank, what is the current Friends contribution yearly?
Well, we just started, so the Friends are just here. As you can see, the number here in 25,005, but the donations, if you look at that, 4530 compared to 27 the past year, and the sponsorships 36 to 15, is kind of reflective of what has been done. There's been a significant increase in the last couple of years.
Does that 25,500, is that cannibalizing the donations number?
No, we kind of look at it a little different. The sponsorships are people that actually sponsor an event. And the donations are people that just give a gift to the theater as a general fund, so that you can use it any way you want to. You're not using it for that production. So we are trying to separate those two activities. We would like to have gifts that are more general and not specific.
Right.
That's a harder sell, for sure.
So you're talking about a 15% year-over-year increase? Is that what you're
That's our
saying?
goal.
The Friends as your
That's our
goal?
goal, yes. And we feel like, it takes a lot of work to do that. The way that it works is that it has to be one-on-one contacting. You just can't say we want a friend, and they'll come in. We have to talk to them about the program, that type of thing. And then, I think lastly, we want to continue to expand the places and community center. And we see all types of activities here. Some are going on now. There's going to be a wedding seminar.
Yeah, a wedding expo here at the end of March.
Scott is going to see that.
Yes.
But we're looking at business seminars, private parties, catered dinners, some of which we already have going, perhaps travel shows, travel presentations, cooking demonstrations, floral arranging, get Reese's to come in here and do a program or something, I don't know. But lots of ideas like that to keep using the theater on a regular basis. And then we also ask Lori if she would look back at the 10-year history of the Local Development Finance Authority, and Scott has a recommendation, I believe, on that, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. In years past, the LDFA, as part of their marketing efforts, would sponsor events at the Playhouse. They haven't done that in the last couple of years, but with the upcoming fiscal year 25-26, that will be one of the staff's recommendations to the LDFA board. They never really blinked twice about supporting the Playhouse, and I think that with the current board, we would probably continue with a pretty sizable sponsorship.
And as I understand it, the LDFA was a supporter of the Playhouse capital campaign as well. So
Yeah.
A big piece of the capital campaign was out of the LDFA.
Yeah, as we started, as I guess this side of the table, Lori, remember that. As we started the capital campaign, the first question a lot of significant donors asked was, what is the city putting into it? They also asked, what am I putting into it, and what is Beth putting into it? So we all three donated. The LDFA ended up putting in 500. I'm looking at Lori.
7,000.
Pardon?
700,000.
$700,000. As a return on investment, we netted another $3.2 million in donations. So that board thought that that was a great use of their funds. And then again, we could start going to those large donors and saying, hey, there's significant support from the city via the LDFA.
And Lori, in the past, you looked at it from 2010 to 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And during that period, there was a support, and it probably averaged about, what's 9,000 a year, let's say, roughly, from the LDFA.
There were a couple of years that were real high. It started at 4 and ended at 10. And there were a couple of years with 30,000 and like 10,000.
So it is, I mean, it would be our recommendation, our support of that the LDFA continue to support the theater in some manner. Maybe close the gap, decide a little later on in the year what you would have to do. If we're successful in raising the funds, we could do that. And ticket sales also are going to be an important part of the equation because we feel that we have a really strong lineup this year. Beth, you probably got to put that on record as the shows that we have this year.
You'd like me to share that right now?
Yes.
Oh, sure. We start at the Summer Theater Festival. We have a lot of shows now between now and the end of June. When we get into our busier season, Central Michigan University is coming in with 2 shows. One is a comedy, the other one's a murder mystery that's actually a musical. Musical murder mystery. Then we have a weekend where the West Michigan, it's the music society. White Lake Music Society, thank you. I'm just blanking. The White Lake Music Society, we are partnering with them. They're bringing in a couple of pianists and a storyteller, and they'll have video, and they're telling the story of Peter and the Wolf and the Sorcerer's Stone. That's a Sunday matinee. We don't have anything the Saturday prior because that's Walk the Beat, and we'll be hopefully participating in that. The next weekend and the next 2 weekends after that, the White Lake Dramatic Club is producing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is a big musical with about 20 plus adult actors and a choir, youth choir of about 10. So hopefully, if you do the how the numbers are supposed to go, 9 times the number of people you have in the case, and that's how many tickets each of those people will bring in. And so that's a motivating factor for us doing that show. The following weekend, beginning of August, the second weekend in August, we're bringing in a comedian. Brandon Osborne is his name. He's originally from Muskegon and now lives in Los Angeles. And he is a comic, a comedian, and a funny writer. He's out there all the time doing things, and he's going to be doing 2 nights of a one-man show here at the Playhouse. And then the final 2 weekends of the summer will be a fantastic class of comedy, Noises Off. So that's our basic summer season. Oh, I forgot Julia Child. Oh my gosh. So the second weekend, so CMU is here the 5th and 6th of July. The following weekend, we are doing a partnership with the Muskegon Museum of Art. They are bringing in the Julia Child touring kitchen exhibit to there, and we have partnered with them in the past. They reached out and said, would you be willing to do a show about Julia Child? And we said, of course. So this is actually a 20-minute operetta called Bon Appetit. I know, it's the best. And Regina Schlaf, who was the Mother Superior last year in Nonsense, will be playing Julia Child. She is a perfect match for her. This is a 20-minute show, which means we have to fill the rest. So we are creating a show featuring Broadway songs about food and drinking and eating and like Food Glorious Food, and hopefully having a youth choir in that as well. Sorry, thank you, Frank. I just jumped over that. So it's an exciting summer with some great partnership possibilities with area restaurants, especially around the Julia Child show. I've already spoken with them, and they're planning on making something a nod or an ode to Julia Child, and we'll do some partnerships with them to promote the show this summer.
I just want to go back a minute to the LDFA funding. What years have they contributed in the past?
Here's a sheet I have, you can look at it. It's from January 2010 through 22. there were contributions made for the operation. And then from 2017 through 22, contributions were made to the capital fund. So that's the breakdown. 121,000 over the period to the operation, and 700,000 to the capital fund. The total capital fund, I think, was close to $4 million.
340, yeah.
339, it was 100,000 between funds.
So this is the break. I can give you a copy of that if you like.
Okay, so it hasn't been the last couple, well, 3 years ago, I guess.
Right. It hasn't. There hasn't been an operational receipt from them for the last 3 years, 4 years now, because we're getting into 26.
How much, what is the amount of pass-through that goes through the chamber? Is that?
Would that have been that 9,000, 10,000, 30? That's not that?
No.
That's something different.
If you're saying pass-through, the chamber gets enough. Pass-through is a reallocation of funds not used by LDFA or TIFA. Those have to go back to all of the taxing jurisdictions on a prorated basis. The Tax Increment Finance Authority contracts with the chamber at 18,000. Is that what we're at now? What is? Tax Increment Finance Authority for marketing of the downtown. And the flowers and some other miscellaneous expenses. And part of that does include a minor sponsorship of the Playhouse.
Okay, I was thinking that Amy had said it was 9,000 before, but it was going up or something to that effect.
Is that just the whole amount that they used to get, that they get? Is that 18,000?
It was
Yep,
basically a percentage of what the city gives them. Was
not really a percentage. I think the current contract calls for $18,000 a year for specific marketing. And a portion of that, I think it's a dollar amount, 10,000, goes towards a sponsorship of the Playhouse.
I think it's 5.
5,000.
Because I think we started at like 9,000, giving them 9,000, and then 5,000 went to the Playhouse, and they've been getting more and more. Well, the Playhouse hasn't gone up, but they've been getting more from the.
Any questions on any of those recommendations? I think that what we would like to do is get them more defined and written out, and do a little more work on the estimate for the end of the year, and come back with a sheet that we would identify what is a recommendation for the budget, what is a recommendation for a policy change, and then what is the recommendation for management. And one other thing I want to mention, there was some discussion at our last meeting about working on an endowment fund. And I think that we all agreed that an endowment fund would be a very good thing for the theater. But an endowment fund is not that easy to raise. And most of our likely sources for the endowment fund are the people that have contributed to the capital campaign. And we still have, I think, 2 or 3 more years to go, 3 more years to go on some of the commitments, which are 10-year, the larger commitments for 10 years. So there's, the number of commitments are smaller, but the dollar amounts are greater. And I guess that's what I would say. So I think there would be time to do a capital campaign, but it takes probably a good year and a half in the planning to get the committee together, to organize a campaign, and then to kick off the campaign. So I think that is still on the table to do for the long run, to set up a fund for the theater that would at least be $1 million that could with the interest being used to operate the theater on an annual basis.
So Frank, when would you be thinking that we would be looking at putting that group together? It takes a year, and I hear you saying that it's a 3 year or so, 2 to 3 years, before we would be ready to actually launch it, but it does take a year and a half to 2 years. So are you thinking next year in 2026
Sure.
for the committee and then sort of move forward so that we can really
We would put that first on the Friends agenda. Ordinarily, the way these campaigns work is that you would get a consultant to come in and do an analysis of the community and try to discover whether there's enough there to do it. In general, I've worked on a lot of these things, so my own feeling is there is, but it takes a lot of work to get that done. And then the other piece of it is that once you set up a capital campaign and an endowment fund, it's a never-ending. Probably it goes on forever. So once you set it up, then you build legacy program giving on it, so it keeps growing and growing and growing. So I think that it's important in the beginning to set it up right.
absolutely. Thank you.
So I think we've tried to cover all of the ideas that came out of the last couple of sessions, plus the city council meetings where people have made recommendations or had thoughts about what might be done. The one thing that we didn't do is we're not recommending adding any staff. I think that we decided that while we would like to, and we know that we could use other people, that we're looking to invest in them.
This is actually taking a step back from the staff, but I did want to share something about that as well. But last week, I think Scott talked, and I just wanted to kind of revisit and ask a couple additional questions. You talked about the marijuana tax and the fact that originally a portion of that was allocated, or the suggestion had been made to the council to allocate part of it to the police, which did happen, maybe not as much as originally thought, but it did happen. And then the other to the Playhouse. The city council had voted to move it towards the sidewalk improvement. What I thought I heard last time, and I just wanted to clarify, is that there is another place that funding for the sidewalks could happen from. Was that the case or no? Was it an if or like an either or situation? I mean, not from the marijuana tax, but from some other area of funding.
Right, we have a lot more flexibility as to where to fund sidewalk improvements from. We can go major streets, local streets, general fund, LDFA, TIFA, wherever the sidewalks are in those districts. So there's a bigger pool to draw from for sidewalk repairs and replacement.
I was just wondering if that might be able to be explored a little bit more, not necessarily the full amount. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 65,000 or 85,000, I can't remember. That was going to go towards sidewalk improvement.
90,000.
90,000. I'm wondering if that's something that could be potentially revisited by the board if we were able to come back to them, maybe not full 90,000, maybe it's 30,000. If you could identify as a city manager where would be potentially other places to get the $30,000 from, because obviously sidewalks are very important to the livability of a community and all of that. So I'm not suggesting kind of that it's an and if or situation, but if that could be possible, if the city would if the council would reconsider then at least a portion of that marijuana tax yearly going to, or even just this year, or if it's the next fiscal year, to the Playhouse as an additional kind of, I guess, placeholder.
I would say that it's likely to not pass if we tried to do that.
Even if you could identify a different funding source for it, so it's not as though it wouldn't happen.
taking money from one place and put it somewhere else. And when you're on the city council, you hear a lot more people complaining about streets and sidewalks than they do about funding the Playhouse.
Oh, I get that.
And I voted against it myself. You know, and just taking money from one place to another, you know, taxpayers generally don't want their money going to the Playhouse.
Well, my
And
understanding,
even shifting it from, taking money from LDFA is still tax money that could go elsewhere. So I think we have to be really careful about it. You know, and that's just my feeling. I don't know how the others will do, but, you know, we all want the Playhouse to be here, but, you know, when you look at I don't know. I don't think it would pass.
okay, well, I just wanted to kind of put that back out there if I was understanding correctly, that there could be potential in other areas of the budget from other areas of, you know, the LDFA coming from the corporate community as opposed to the individual taxpayer. If that might make it a little bit different or more of an acceptable kind of situation, and also not asking for the full 90,000. I do obviously agree as well that the sidewalks are important and being able to move around the city is important. I'm just, you know, wanted to know if that was sort of the understanding that there could be potentially somewhere else where you could get those dollars.
There isn't, I'll say my recommendation, a lot of times I say staff, but my recommendation utilizing the marijuana tax was a recognition that a lot of homeowners did not support a portion of their tax dollars going to the Playhouse. Marijuana money is not property taxpayer money, so that's what our thinking was, my thinking was. And I don't know if that was, I thought you said you were backing up, I thought you were going a little further back. Because you asked about, you know, the question was, how did we get here? So being mostly a visual person.
Me too.
If you could, oh, did I get that far enough? Yeah. And I think I've got enough for anybody in the audience who wants to run around. Look at all the volunteers jump up. Thank you. And I will admit this is kind of basic, but if you consider the finances, the numerous sources and everything, it can be quite complicated. But just looking at the current fiscal year, that blue line right in the middle is our fixed cost. Simplified put, that's the $449,000 divided by 12. I went monthly. That will fluctuate a little bit, and you know, if I went down and spent, you know, a day or two with Alyssa going through all the fine details, that line on the far left will probably be higher because our expenses are a little bit higher when it comes to the summer theater. But in general, 68% of our expenditures are fixed. So there's not a whole lot of latitude. You know, Lori pointed out $5,100 is the 2-month utility bill for January and February utilities. Cutting that in half is going to save, you know, $2,500. When we consider the enormity of the negative cash balance, that's not a lot, but to steal a line, there are no small parts in theater. Thank you. I just thought of that. The orange line is basically the monthly revenue. So as you can see, as we started this year, we're quite comfortable. But then you go below it with the orange line, and now we are not meeting our monthly cost. And I think the daily expense right now, I just gave it to you, and I took it off. Yeah, $1,200 is what our daily expenses for the Playhouse. And then again, that's fixed. That's your utilities, that's your salaries, that's working, that's everything. So getting us up to a $1,600 daily rental is great because that's almost a 30% profit. But we're not renting the building every single day. So that's our challenge. So as you go through, you see where we're at the $76,000 cash balance. A request of the city council to loan money failed. So that kind of, out of that came this committee to try and look at, as Frank mentioned, some short-term and long-term financial stability to the Playhouse. Up in the gray box, I think is probably where Julie was leaning towards. The city council actually adopted a budget with a $90,000 deficit for this fiscal year. Looking at the numbers, that's where we recognize that the Playhouse does need some sort of financial support. The recommendation was half of that marijuana tax money have to go to the police department and have to go to the Playhouse. The end result, $90,000 with the sidewalks, $20,000 to the police department, and it's probably going to be more like $6,000 because we had estimated $118,000. I think it's $116 is what the actual revenue would be. So another $6,000 towards streets. And if you look at where we're at today, we're at a negative $68,000 cash balance, correct, Melissa? That $59,000 would put us at a negative 9. And if we're at a negative 9, I don't think that I appreciate all the input and it's getting some great information, but I don't think the panic button is pushed if we're at a $9,000 deficit. And I think I've probably said before, preached a few times, is that and it's ultimately in the city council's hands. If the city council feels that the Playhouse is an asset to the community, they have to recognize that there are more often than not times for the need for some sort of supplemental income. So that's just a real quick, kind of how do we get here?
Scott, the question that I would have is just in looking at the projecting for the year end, because we have so much in there that actually is attributable to the next fiscal year. It looks like you're going to be more in the $35,000 to $40,000 range.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where right now we still need to do some work on it, but it looks like it's going to be around that number, 35, which is interesting that it falls right in with what you shared with us 2 times ago. This is about 35,000, 40,000.
Some of this, I just feel like I have to comment on the part of the city council. Sounds like we're getting blamed for this. And the thing is, is there some place in the budget for it? Sure. This is the police department. We forked over another $50,000, $52,000 or $3,000 when they needed a new squad car. We didn't buy a used one. We already have, by a long shot, the most expensive police department for a town our size. And there's money to come from somewhere else, but it's a hard decision, and it's really something to be discussed more appropriate in the city council. But it's a hard issue. It's really not one that should be argued here, I guess. But there's other concerns.
I think that what we're trying to do is make a reasonable recommendation to the council with options as to what might be done, and there are other options. I mean, you can close the theater for another month, or you could close the theater for 2 more months. We don't think that makes a whole lot of sense, given what it would take to run the theater and serve the community as a cultural center. I don't know what the proportion of $40,000 would be to the total city budget. I have no idea.
It's a $10 to $12 million annual budget.
Yeah, so we're talking about 0.4% maybe or something. I mean, the thing that I see, it really does come down to quality of life. I mean, it is a quality of life for more than the Whitehall community for sure. But I think that outside of the Whitehall community, a lot of people step up to support that this fall. So,
Well, and I would just like to say, Tom, from a personal perspective, I'm not blaming the city council at all. Where I was coming from by asking the question is trying to clarify some of the comments that Scott had made. And when I actually said the city council, maybe I didn't say this clearly as I would like to.
I don't get it. It's
on the brink of something. Yeah, but what I was gonna, yes, exactly. What I was gonna say is, the only reason I brought up the city council is because the original suggestion had to come and the budget is approved by the city council. So that's why I brought up the city council. And then my thought was, is there a way to potentially share this and share the information in a way that might have the city council reconsider? That's where I was coming from that example. I'm fully aware, just like in my own personal, and I'm sure everybody here is, their own personal budgets, we have to make decisions about what we do on a daily and weekly and monthly and yearly basis. So that's where I was kind of coming from, is there a way to do this that doesn't harm one place for another, and that maybe would put this in the positive light that I see, meaning from the Playhouse, what a unique and valuable place this is to our community. And not saying that means it's more important than police there, it's more important than sidewalks, but like, how is there a way, based on what he had talked about, that we can find and not even all the money, but a little bit of money, and maybe it's only for 3 years. And so we have the, endowment, our foundation up and running. So that's where I was coming from. I just wanted you to know, I didn't want you to feel like this is a personal attack on you or anybody on the city council.
I was at the back this morning and I got asked about streets again.
Yes.
By somebody that lives on Muskegon Street, which is one of the worst streets in the city. And my understanding is that's not going to be addressed now for another 2 or 3 years. We have a lot of things. And one thing that I would ask is if everybody agrees that the local businesses benefit from the Playhouse to one degree or another. Has anybody ever approached the city of Montague to ask for something in recognition of the fact that they benefit too?
yeah, we did on the capital campaign.
Did you?
Yes, for sure.
It's not just Whitehall.
I would say, at least for what is being done with the food program or the meal events, is that almost all the restaurants in the area have participated. And they've stepped up and have agreed to step up for us in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, at least from the corporate point of view, Montague has contributed as well as Whitehall. So, from the corporate point of view, that they clearly are donors. If we look at the donor wall, we have many Montague contributors.
Mm-hmm.
So, but from the tax point of view, no, we have not had a contribution from the tax way up.
But it's a possibility.
Sure.
Right.
I think the way that we would, hopefully that we would position it for you is that we're optimistic about the future. We do have a cap that we need to cover, and there are many different ways that we might cover it. And I think that everybody that is involved on the front side and on the staff side are working very hard to cover the gap. But it's not an easy thing to do. The other thing that we don't have in here is there going to be inflation? And what is going to be the impact if there is? We know prices are going up.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But these projections are with prices remaining relatively the same, and that may not be the case. And we don't know about other events. I mean, we had a big event scheduled it was a moneymaker. We knew it was a moneymaker for us because we did it before. Peter Yarrow, Peter Paul and Mary was doing it before. It probably was a $6,000 to $10,000 revenue for us, and he died. I mean, so what are you going to do? These things happen. We're trying to predict the future as best we can.
And getting back to the $35,000 to $40,000 shortfall by the end of the year, these other ideas, those would basically be creating revenues in the next fiscal year, mostly. So it still doesn't address the current situation.
I think if you looked at it in a simple way, if
Yeah.
you look at it in just a simple way, if I were looking at it from maybe Scott's shoes, I'd say, hey city, if you take care of the building, it's your building. You take care of the building, you cover the utilities, and you cover the maintenance of the building. The rest we can manage. That's simple. I know it's not that simple, but it is a simple way of looking at it. It's your building, as long as you have it, can you support the operation of the building? I realized that it was a past council that we talked to when we started the capital campaign, that they would support this deal. I know things have changed, and that's perfectly understandable. But that's a simple way, and we're not quite looking at it that way because we would look at it as being more, let us see how we progress, but keep you informed all the time about how it's going. I think once we have this out, and we can start comparing and showing you, this is what we did this month, this is what we're doing this month. It'll be a lot better for the council and for us.
Well, I think ultimately that would be a great thing if the operations of the Playhouse were handled by 501(c) or something like that.
We don't want
You don't want that.
that. Right now, that's a real.
Well, and as a Friends organization, you can't. You are 501c3 status, yeah, and that's not, yeah.
You can have a 501c3 that would operate the Playhouse. Right. But they would have to have possession of the Playhouse.
What they told me about the theater in Manistee is that it is owned by the city, but the operations are run by a 501(c).
Okay.
And I don't know the legalities of it or anything, but,
That would be a good question to ask the attorney. I don't know. I know that I'm involved with some other organizations that are 501c3s that run facilities, but they own the facilities. But that doesn't change. And it also doesn't change the financial situation because the 501c3 would be struggling for money. The one difficulty that we have, that the Playhouse has, is it has no cash. It's like a startup business that had no money to start up. So if you really look at it from the point of view of what was done, and that's where the reliance at the time we did the capital campaign, frankly, was on the city to do that. And that was to advance the money until we could get it going. But we would have the same problem. We have no startup. So if you look at the advertising marketing compared to the $300,000 of operating, it's pretty low.
But at least in theory, theories aren't always good. But then in theory, the people that really are passionate about the Playhouse, would carry the load to keep it there. But again, it's a value. It's a value to the city too.
Sure.
To the whole area.
Very few theaters operate without some kind of support.
Mm-hmm. Are they still doing the yoga in the mornings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Monday and Wednesday mornings in the lounge.
Is that something that could, and that's an income off that, correct?
It is. They give us a third of whatever income they get that day. So they give us a third of that.
Can they bump that up to 3 or 4 days a week?
That's something I can put out there to them. We're their consistent place indoors throughout the year. It's something I could ask Hannah if she's willing to do that or interested. She does tend to travel around.
Right.
So I don't know what her schedule looks like. But yeah, it is an income for us.
So we want to put together some material for consideration for our next meeting. There would be several sheets of recommendations on a policy level, on a operating level, on a management level, and a futuristic level. Trying to get those things developed. And we'll probably need a couple weeks to do that. We should set another date.
Sure. That was something else.
Would would Wednesday the 26th work?
It does not work for me, sorry.
How much time is gonna be needed to put together recommendations?
I'm thinking to give us a couple weeks to
So you might be looking first week of April?
we could go.
I could do Wednesday the 2nd. We have a Friends of the Playhouse meeting also that evening though. If you don't want to do back-to-back meetings.
You could figure it all out at the Friends.
The Friends meeting and just tell you what to do? I'm down, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not gonna be here, I'm not gonna be here on the 3rd, but what about the 31st?
Of April, or excuse me,
March.
March,
The Monday the
a
3rd.
Monday. I am available.
You're not available? You are. Listen, are you
What time would it be, 4 or 5 o'clock?
Yeah, we can do it. Okay. 5 o'clock. Scott, is that what you're doing?
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock on the 31st? That'll give us time to kind of work the numbers, and we will have the end of the month, pretty close to the end of the month done.
One of the things we missed is public comment. Would you like to still offer that?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We would take public comment now. Is there someone who'd like to?
Let me grab the mic over here for
I
you.
see one.
Well, what do you do for the video?
Oh, there's video going on?
Oh, yeah.
I think I'll
We're
sit
the most
down.
interesting video in town.
Can I sit down now?
Thank you, Alice.
I didn't know they were video.
That's okay. Yeah, they do all of our city meetings.
Okay, first of all, my name is Alice Gamble, and I have been on the committees before for the Playhouse, and I talked one other time, so I won't go into that. I want to thank all of you to coming together in a respectful way to deal with this problem, because it needs to be solved, and I want this building to stay and thrive. I think it's a really important aspect of the community. But I would like to address your reference to raising the rent. I am the fundraising chair for the Arts Council of White Lake. And we have hoped to build more programming where we bring people in, professionals in. And we've got one coming up in May. We're renting this facility for 2 days, 2 evenings, and some workshop time. And we're paying good money for it. And when you talk about almost doubling it, I gotta tell you, there's absolutely no way we could ever rent it at those prices. So there you're losing one customer right off the bat to double those prices. We're paying X amount of dollars to bring in these people from Chicago. It's a fundraiser for us at the same time. We're getting sponsorships. Yes, but we're not making ends meet. We have to pay for some of it ourselves. And doubling that just wouldn't allow us to bring in any more groups or do anything. So that concerns me a little bit.
Alice, I'd like to respond to just a bit and give you a little bigger picture thinking. Is that, first of all, remember that we said that we were going to make some recommendations in the budget and we're gonna make, for the budget, and we make some recommendations to the management. And one of the recommendations that we want the management to have is the flexibility to deal with someone like you, who is a nonprofit, is doing good things in the community, and developing a structure that works for you. But we have an audience out there, the private audience, that is paying $4,000 to $5,000 to have a wedding in some other venue, when this is a very nice and interesting and a good venue to have it in for a far less price, and still meets our goal of increasing revenue for our renters.
Okay,
So what we're looking at doing is having you one-on-one talk about.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is local and nonprofits have opportunity.
There has to be flexibility in the budget, you know, I mean, it can be a partnership. I mean, we would look at nonprofits as being partners with us in a lot of ways, and particularly the Arts Council.
So along those lines, the alcohol pricing, I know, I'm not a drinker, I mean, I drink, but I'm not a drinker. So when I come to the show, I like a beer or a glass of wine, but $9 is, after you're raising the ticket prices, I think $9 is a lot of money for a drink, when I don't get to choose the quality of the drink necessarily. So it's just a thought. I would hate to see you, I think that's a good moneymaker, the wine and the beer, and I'd hate to see you lose on that, because I know most people, most people do buy one. I just think of the economy the way it is, I would probably go, I can do with a water tonight, that kind of thing. And I would hate to see you lose that money, because I think that's solid money. Like when we're renting for our event, they're going to have the concessions open and they get the money from that, and that's great. So it's a good way to bring in extra money. My comment, you had kind of already summed up, was that yes, the city owns the building. Let's face it, the city owns the building. So I think it is, from my opinion, the city's kind of responsibility to at least take care of the basics of the building. Not the programming, not the necessarily the hiring or anything like that in terms of salaries, but the building itself, I think, and so when you talk about the marijuana money, I think it's a good solution, because it's not taxpayer money, it's recreational money. And this is recreation for a lot of people, the theater is. Have you considered, this is probably more on Beth's line, but have you considered pushing any, I don't know, out of Grand Rapids or whatever, travel companies to come bring people to a specific show, and see if we can't get more people in groups here? And I didn't know if that would help or not, but a lot of people, hop on a bus, especially older people that can't afford to drive themselves, and will go to an evening or something like that.
Just to respond to that, there is actually a group out of Holland that came last year and they're coming back this year.
Okay.
And it's Holland seniors, and they're bringing about 50 people to one of our shows this summer. So
I think that's great.
It's a great idea.
If we can do more of that.
You just
That's what's up there. Other than that, thank you very much for all you do.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you. Anyone else?